I've been blessed to live a good many years, 62 years now, and in that time, I've seen so much. The goodness of people, and sometimes regrettably the difficult challenges and heartbreaks of life. I've spent my life sharing messages of hope and faith, encouraging people to live in their God-given potential. But what I'm about to share with you today isn't a sermon topic I researched. It's not a story from a book. It's something that truly happened to me 3 weeks ago that has stayed deeply in my heart. And I'm sharing it because I believe it speaks volumes about who we are as children of God, about the compassion we're called to show, and about the kind of world we are creating, or sometimes failing to create. 3 weeks ago, Joel Osteen, was driving through Wyoming. I'd been visiting some friends up in Montana and was heading back home to Houston. It was late afternoon and early winter, that time of year when the weather can turn on you without warning. When I left that morning, the sky was clear, the roads were dry, but by mid-afternoon, a storm system had moved in fast. The temperature dropped, the wind picked up, and before I knew it, I was driving through a full-on snowstorm. Now, I'm an experienced driver. I've driven through all kinds of conditions, but this storm was serious. The kind where you can barely see 10 feet in front of you, where the wind is pushing your vehicle around, where you're gripping the steering wheel with both hands and moving at about 20 miles an hour, just trying to stay on the road. I was on a rural highway, one of those stretches where you might go 20 or 30 miles without seeing another vehicle, where there are no gas stations or rest stops, just open country and the occasional ranch access road. The kind of place where if you break down, you're in real trouble, especially in weather like this. I'd been driving like this for maybe 40 minutes, focused entirely on keeping the vehicle on the road, when something caught my eye, just a flash of movement off to the right side of the road. At first I thought maybe it was a deer or an elk. They're common in that area and they can be a hazard in storms like this. But something in my spirit made me slow down even more and look closer. And that's when I saw it. About 15 feet off the road, barely visible through the blowing snow, was a dog. A large dog standing in the snow, and it was clear immediately that something was wrong. The dog wasn't moving around like an animal that was free would move. It was standing in one spot. And even from the road, I could see it was shaking. Whether from cold or fear or both, I couldn't tell. I pulled over as far as I safely could and put on my hazard lights. My first thought was that this was someone's pet that had gotten loose and was lost in the storm. It happens. Dogs can bolt when they're scared, can slip out of yards, can wander off and get disoriented. I figured I'd try to catch the dog, get it in my vehicle where it was warm, and take it to the nearest town where animal control or a vet could help reunite it with its owner. I got out of the vehicle, and let me tell you, that wind hit me like a wall. The temperature had to be in the low 20s, and with the wind chill, it felt like maybe 5 or 10 degrees. The snow was coming down so hard and fast that within seconds, my jacket was covered. I pulled my collar up and started making my way toward the dog. As I got closer, I could see more details. And what I saw brought a deep sense of righteous indignation within me. This dog wasn't lost. This dog hadn't wandered off. This dog had been deliberately abandoned. Someone had tied it to a metal pole, looked like an old fence post, or maybe part of an abandoned gate, with a rope around its neck. The rope was short enough that the dog could stand or lie down, but couldn't move more than a few feet in any direction. The dog saw me approaching and started making these sounds. Not aggressive barking, but this desperate whining, these pleading sounds that went right through my heart. Its eyes were fixed on me with this look that I've never forgotten and probably never will. It was a look of desperation and hope mixed together. This animal knew it was in serious trouble, knew it had been abandoned, and yet it was still hoping that a human might help rather than hurt. As I got within a few feet, the dog didn't growl or show any signs of aggression. It just kept making those pleading sounds and shaking. Its coat was thick, which had probably kept it alive this long, but I could see ice forming on its fur. It had probably been out there for hours, maybe longer. I talked to it softly. "Hey there, it's okay. I'm going to help you. Just stay calm." The kind of things you say to a scared animal, even though, they don't understand the words, but they understand the tone. And I wanted this dog to know I wasn't a threat. I knelt down in the snow. My knees, well, they reminded me of my age, but my heart knew I had to do it, let me tell you. I reached out slowly to let the dog smell my hand. It sniffed briefly, then pushed its head against my hand in this gesture that was clearly seeking comfort and warmth. My heart broke right there. I started working on the rope around its neck. Whoever had tied this dog up had used a thick rope and had tied it tight, too tight. The rope was digging into the dog's neck, and the knot was frozen solid from the cold and wet. I couldn't untie it with my bare hands, and I'd left my gloves in the vehicle. I told the dog, still talking to it gently, "I need to go back to my truck and get something to cut this rope. I'll be right back. I promise." Like I said, the dog didn't understand the words, but it seemed to understand that I was trying to help, because it just sat there watching me with those eyes. I hurried back to my vehicle. Well, hurried as much as a 62-year-old pastor can hurry through deep snow in a blizzard, and grabbed my pocket knife and my gloves. That's when I noticed something else. There was a cardboard box partially collapsed from the wet snow about 10 feet from where the dog was tied. I hadn't seen it at first because of the snow and because I'd been focused on the dog. Something about that box made me uneasy. I made my way over to it, and when I looked inside, I felt a wave of anger and heartbreak that I'm still processing. Inside the box were two puppies, two tiny puppies. Couldn't have been more than maybe 6 or 8 weeks old. They were huddled together in the corner of the box, shaking violently, covered in snow that had blown into the box. The cardboard was soaked through and falling apart. These puppies had no protection from the elements whatsoever. They were barely moving, and I realized with horror that they were probably in the early stages of hypothermia. And suddenly it all made sense. The dog tied to the post wasn't just an abandoned pet, it was a mother. Someone had brought this mother dog and her two puppies out to this isolated stretch of road, tied the mother up so she couldn't follow them when they left, put the puppies in a box nearby, close enough that the mother could see them and hear them, but couldn't reach them to protect them, and then drove away, leaving all 3 of them to freeze to death in a snowstorm. As a pastor, I've counseled countless people through their darkest moments, and I've preached against the darkness we sometimes see in the world. But this real-life cruelty hit me harder than almost anything I've encountered, because this wasn't a story from a news report. This was real. This was 3 living, feeling creatures who had been deliberately left to die in the most cruel way imaginable. It was utterly heartbreaking. I went back to the mother dog first. She was watching the box with the puppies, clearly aware that her babies were there, and clearly distressed that she couldn't get to them. I put my gloves on and used my knife to cut through the frozen rope. It took some work. The rope was thick and the angle was awkward, but I finally got through it. The moment the rope came free, that mother dog didn't run away. She didn't bolt for freedom. She went straight to that box with her puppies. She tried to get into the box, but it was too small and was collapsing from her weight in the wet snow. She was making these distressed sounds, trying to lick her puppies, trying to get them to move and respond. I realized I needed to get all 3 of them into my vehicle immediately. Those puppies were in critical condition, and the mother wasn't far behind. I reached into the box and picked up both puppies. They were so small I could hold them both in my 2 hands. They were cold, colder than anything living should feel. They were barely responsive. I tucked them inside my jacket against my chest, trying to share whatever body heat I could, and started back toward my vehicle. The mother dog followed right beside me. She wasn't leaving her babies. When I got to the vehicle, I opened the back door and helped the mother dog in. She was weak and cold, but she managed to jump up onto the back seat. I got into the driver's seat with the puppies still tucked in my jacket and cranked the heat up as high as it would go. And I carefully took the puppies out and placed them in the back seat with their mother. She immediately started licking them, trying to warm them, trying to get them to move. One of the puppies started responding a little, making weak sounds, moving slightly. The other one wasn't moving at all. I grabbed my phone and searched for the nearest veterinary clinic. The GPS showed one about 35 miles away in a small town. Under normal conditions, that would be maybe a 30-minute drive. In this storm with these roads, I was looking at well over an hour, maybe more. I got back on the road, driving as fast as I dared, which wasn't very fast. I kept looking in the rearview mirror at the mother dog and her puppies. She was completely focused on them, licking them constantly, trying to warm them with her body. I could see her shaking, whether from cold, exhaustion, stress, or all 3, I don't know. I called the veterinary clinic, thank God I had cell service, and explained the situation. The woman who answered, I later learned her name was Sarah, and she's the head veterinary technician there, said they were supposed to close in 20 minutes. But when she heard what I was describing, she said, "We'll wait for you, drive carefully, but get here as fast as you can. Those puppies are in serious danger. That drive was one of the longest of my life. I've been in challenging situations before. I've been in places where there was real physical danger. But this was different. This was knowing that 3 innocent lives were depending on me getting to that clinic in time. And I had no control over the weather or the roads, or how fast I could safely drive. I talked to the dogs the whole way. I don't know if it helped them, but it certainly helped me. I told the mother dog that she was brave, that she had protected her babies as well as she could, that we were going to get help. I told the puppies to hang on, to keep fighting, that we were almost there. After what felt like hours, but was probably about 70 or 80 minutes, I finally saw the lights of the town. The GPS guided me to the veterinary clinic, a small building on the edge of town. I pulled into the parking lot and saw that the lights were on inside. They'd waited for us. I helped the mother dog out of the vehicle, and she followed me as I carried both puppies, wrapped in a blanket I keep in the vehicle, into the clinic. The door opened before I could even reach it, and Sarah was there with another person, a young man who I later learned was Dr. Martinez, the veterinarian. They took one look at the puppies and immediately went into action. Sarah took the puppies from me and rushed them into the back. Dr. Martinez started examining the mother dog right there in the lobby. He was asking me questions. How long did I think they'd been out there? Were they responsive when I found them? Had they been exposed to the wind? All while his hands were moving over the mother dog, checking her temperature, her heartbeat, her breathing. He said the mother dog was hypothermic, but not critically so. Her thick coat and her larger body mass had protected her better than it had protected the puppies. He said she was also dehydrated and exhausted, and she had some abrasions on her neck from the rope, but she was going to be okay with treatment. Then Sarah came back out from the back room, and her expression told me everything before she said a word. She said one of the puppies, the one that had been barely moving when I found them, was going to make it. They'd gotten its core temperature up. They'd gotten fluids into it, and it was responding to treatment. It wasn't out of danger yet, but the prognosis was good. The other puppy, the one that hadn't been moving, had died. They'd tried everything they could, but it had been too cold for too long. Its little body had just shut down, and there was nothing they could do to bring it back. A profound sadness washed over me, a deep ache in my spirit. I know that sounds overly dramatic, but that's what it felt like. I kept thinking, if I'd been driving that road 10 minutes earlier, would that puppy still be alive? If I had spotted them sooner, if I'd worked faster, if I'd driven faster, would it have made a difference? Martinez must have sensed the heavy weight on my heart because he put his hand on my shoulder and said something I'll carry with me always. He said, "Pastor Osteen?" Yes, someone had recognized. "You saved 2 lives today, perhaps even 3, he added, counting the mother. "Without you, all 3 of them would have perished out there tonight. We can't save everyone, but you saved the ones you could. And that, Pastor, truly matters in God's eyes." They kept all 3 dogs, the mother and the 2 puppies, one living and one deceased, overnight for observation and the treatment. They said the mother needed warmth, food, fluids, and rest. The surviving puppy needed intensive care. I paid for everything up front, told them to do whatever was necessary. Cost didn't matter. The clinic owner found me a motel nearby. The storm was still raging, and it wasn't safe for me, Joel Osteen, to drive any further that night. Anyway, before I left the clinic, I went back to see the mother dog. They had her in a large kennel with blankets and a heat lamp. She was lying down, but when she saw me, she lifted her head and looked at me with those eyes again. But this time it wasn't desperation. It was something else. Gratitude, perhaps. If dogs can feel that, I believe they can. Recognition? Certainly. She knew I had helped her. I knelt down carefully because my knees had been through enough that day and reached through the kennel door to pet her. She licked my hand and then laid her head back down. She was exhausted. The next morning, the storm had passed. The sky was clear and bright, and the sun was reflecting off what must have been 8 or 10 inches of fresh snow. Everything looked clean and beautiful, which felt right somehow, a new day dawning after such a difficult night. I went back to the clinic. Dr. Martinez said both the mother and the surviving puppy had made it through the night and were doing well. The mother's temperature was back to normal. She was eating and drinking, and her spirit seemed better. The puppy was still weak, but was responding well to treatment. I asked what would happen to them now. Dr. Martinez explained that typically in cases of abandoned animals, they would contact animal control, the dogs would be placed in a shelter, and they'd try to find them homes. But he said honestly, with the holidays coming up and with the mother being a larger breed and older, he estimated she was maybe 5 or 6 years old, and with the puppy needing ongoing care, Their chances of being adopted weren't great. They might end up in a shelter for a long time or worse. I didn't even think about it. I just said, I'll take them. Dr. Martinez looked surprised. He said, both of them? Are you sure? That's a commitment, especially with the puppy needing follow-up care. I said, I'm sure. These dogs have been through enough. They're not going to a shelter. They're coming home with me. Now, I'm 62 years old. I live alone. Well, I have people who work for me, but I don't have family living with me day to day. I hadn't had a dog in years, and I certainly hadn't planned on getting 2 dogs. But standing there in that clinic, looking at these animals who had been so cruelly abandoned, who had come so close to death, who had lost one of their family, I couldn't walk away from them. I truly felt that this was part of God's plan for me, Joel Osteen, at that moment. We arranged for them to stay at the clinic for a few more days until they were fully recovered, until I could get home and prepare for them, getting supplies, setting up spaces for them, that sort of thing. Dr. Martinez gave me detailed instructions on how to care for them, especially the puppy. When I finally brought them home a week later, it was one of the strangest and best feelings I've had in a long time. The mother dog, I named her Grace, because she truly embodied God's grace and unwavering spirit through everything she'd been through, walked into my house cautiously at first, sniffing everything, checking out every room. Then she seemed to decide it was safe, and she settled right in. The puppy, I named him Cooper because he had this quiet, dignified presence. Even as a puppy, was still small enough that I had to carry him most places. He stayed close to Grace, and she was incredibly gentle and protective with him. Watching them together, you could see the bond between them, the trauma they'd shared, the survival they'd achieved together. Now, you might be wondering why I'm telling you this story. You might be thinking, okay, Joel Osteen found some abandoned dogs, rescued them, and adopted them. That's nice, but what's the bigger point? The bigger point, friends, is this. What I encountered on that road 3 weeks ago is a stark reminder of where we sometimes fall short as a society, of the areas where we need to let God's light shine more brightly. The fact that someone could take a mother dog and her puppies, drive them out to a remote location, tie the mother up, put the babies in a cardboard box, and leave them to freeze to death in a snowstorm. That tells you something about where we are as a culture, as a people, as human beings. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't someone who lost their dog and couldn't find it. This was deliberate cruelty. This was someone making a conscious decision that these lives, these feeling, breathing, suffering lives were disposable, that they were inconvenient and therefore could be thrown away like garbage. And here's what truly weighs on my spirit. Whoever did this isn't some caricature of evil. It's likely just an ordinary person, perhaps struggling, perhaps misguided, who made a terrible choice. Maybe someone who got a dog without thinking about the responsibility. Maybe the dog had puppies they didn't want and couldn't or wouldn't deal with. Maybe they thought this was easier than taking the dogs to a shelter, or cheaper than paying a veterinarian to humanely euthanize animals they didn't want. Whatever their reasoning, they made a choice. They chose indifference. They chose the easy way out for themselves, regardless of the suffering it would cause. And that choice resulted in the death of an innocent puppy and could have resulted in the death of all 3 if I, Joel Osteen, hadn't happened to be driving by. But here's the thing that I've been thinking about constantly since this happened. How many animals suffer and die like this that nobody finds? How many are abandoned in places where no one happens to drive by? How many are left in boxes in dumpsters or tied up in woods or thrown into rivers or left in abandoned buildings? The statistics are horrifying. Every year in this country, millions of animals are abandoned, abused, or neglected. Shelters are overflowing. Rescue organizations are overwhelmed. And while there are thousands of good people working in animal welfare trying to help, the problem keeps getting worse because people keep making the same selfish, thoughtless, cruel decisions. And I think the way we treat animals says something fundamental about who we are as human beings. I've always believed that you can judge a society by how it treats those who are vulnerable, those who have no power, those who cannot speak for themselves. Animals fit that category perfectly. They're completely dependent on us. They can't advocate for themselves. They can't escape from us. If we choose to mistreat them, they're at our mercy. So when we show them no mercy, when we abuse them, neglect them, abandon them, what does that say about us? It says we're a society that has lost its way morally. It says we value convenience over responsibility. It says we see living beings as disposable when they become inconvenient. Let me tell you what these last 3 weeks with Grace and Cooper they have taught me. Having them in my home, caring for them, watching them recover and start to trust again, it's reminded me of something I think we all know instinctively, but sometimes forget. That caring for another living being, taking responsibility for something vulnerable, giving when you're not going to get anything back except maybe some affection and companionship, this is what makes us human in the best sense of the word. This is what truly honors God's creation. Grace still has some fear in her. When I pick up anything that looks like a rope, she flinches. When I move toward her quickly, she sometimes cowers. She's been traumatized. And that trauma doesn't just disappear, but every day she trusts a little more. Every day she's a little less afraid. Every day she seems to understand a little better that she's safe now, that nobody's going to hurt her or abandon her again. Cooper, being younger, is recovering faster. He's gaining weight, getting stronger, becoming more playful. He follows Grace everywhere, and she watches over him constantly. Their relationship is beautiful to witness. This bond between mother and puppy forged in trauma, but expressing itself now in tenderness and care. In watching them, I'm struck by how much they have to teach us about resilience, about forgiveness, about moving forward after terrible things have happened to you. These dogs have every reason to be wary of humans. They were betrayed by humans in the worst possible way, and yet they're capable of trusting again, of forming bonds again, of giving affection to the people who show them kindness. It's a testament to the purity of their spirit. You know, I've lived through a lot of decades, seen a lot of changes in society, and I think one of the changes that troubles me most is how disposable everything has become. We live in a throwaway culture. Products are designed to break, so we'll buy new ones. Relationships end the moment they become difficult. Commitments are abandoned when they're no longer convenient. And living beings, animals, and sometimes even people, are treated as disposable when they no longer serve our purposes. Whatever happened to responsibility? Whatever happened to the idea that when you take on a commitment, whether it's adopting a pet or entering a relationship or having a child or making a promise, you follow through on it even when it's hard, even when it's not what you want anymore, even when it costs you something? When someone gets involved, they're not buying a toy. They're taking on a living being that will depend on them completely for 10 or 12 or 15 years. That dog will need food, water, shelter, medical care, exercise, attention, and love every single day for its entire life. If you're not prepared to provide that for years through whatever changes might come in your life, then you have no business getting a dog. And if you do get a dog and then circumstances change, maybe you move and can't keep the dog. Maybe you have financial problems. Maybe you have health issues. There are humane options. Shelters exist. Rescue organizations exist. Veterinarians can provide humane euthanasia if it's truly necessary. There is never, ever a justifiable reason to abandon an animal to suffer and die. But it's not enough for me, Joel Osteen, to just stand here and tell you that animal cruelty is wrong. You know that. Everyone knows that, except apparently the people who keep doing it. What I want to do is challenge each of you to actually do something about this problem. First, if you have pets, treat them with the respect and care they deserve. They're not accessories. They're not property in the sense of being things you own and can dispose of. They're living beings you've taken responsibility for. Honor that responsibility. Second, if you're thinking about getting a pet, think hard about whether you're really prepared for the commitment. Don't get an animal on an impulse. Don't get an animal because it's cute as a puppy or kitten without thinking about what it will be like when it's full grown. Don't get an animal if your living situation or financial situation or lifestyle isn't stable enough to care for it properly. It's better not to get an animal at all than to get one you can't or won't care for. Third, if you see animal abuse or neglect, report it. Don't look the other way. Don't assume someone else will handle it. Call animal control, call the police, call the Humane Society. Whoever has jurisdiction in your area, be willing to be a witness. Be willing to speak up for animals who can't speak for themselves. Fourth, support the organizations and the people who are doing the hard work of animal welfare. Donate to shelters and rescue organizations if you can. Volunteer if you have the time. Foster animals if you have the space. Adopt from shelters instead of buying from breeders or pet stores. There are millions of animals in shelters right now who need homes. Animals just as worthy of love and care as any purebred you could buy. And fifth, this is important. When you see cruelty, when you see injustice, when you see the vulnerable being mistreated, don't become numb to it. Don't let it just become another news story or another social media post that you scroll past. Let it affect you. Let it make you feel a righteous anger. Let it motivate you to action. Because I'll tell you something, I, Joel Osteen, am 62 years old. I've seen a lot of insensitivity in my life. Human insensitivity to other humans, human insensitivity to animals, insensitivity that's hard to even comprehend. And if I've learned anything, it's that suffering thrives when good people do nothing. Suffering continues when people who know better look the other way, stay silent, don't want it to get involved, don't want to make waves. This kind of disregard for life, and yes, abandoning these innocent animals to freeze to death, it's truly heartbreaking. It's a manifestation of a spirit that has lost its way. And this kind of indifference thrives when good people become passive. It depends on people saying, that's terrible, but what can I do about it? It depends on people being more concerned with their own comfort and convenience than with stopping suffering. But it doesn't have to be that way. Every single one of us has power. Maybe not power to solve the whole problem, but power to make a difference in one situation, to save one life, to prevent one act of cruelty. And if everyone did that, if everyone said, I'm going to actually do something instead of just being upset about it, the cumulative effect would be massive. You know, people sometimes ask me about my legacy. They ask what I want to be remembered for, my sermons, my books, my ministry. And those things are good. I'm grateful for the platform God has given me. But honestly, as I reflect on my life, what matters most to me isn't the crowds I've spoken to or the titles I've held. What truly matters is the impact we have on individual lives, the kindness we extend to God's creation. What matters is whether you left the world a little better than you found it. What matters is whether you showed up when someone or some creature needed help, even when it was inconvenient, even when it cost you something, even when nobody was watching and you wouldn't get credit for it. 3 weeks ago, I, Joel Osteen, could have driven past that dog and those puppies. The storm was bad, the visibility was poor. I could have convinced myself I hadn't really seen anything, or that someone else would help, or that I needed to focus on getting myself to safety. It would have been the easier choice, the more comfortable choice, but I didn't. I stopped. I got out in the freezing cold and the blowing snow. I helped. And because of that, 2 lives were saved. Grace and Cooper are alive today because I made that choice. And I'll tell you honestly, saving them has enriched my life more than anything I've done in years. Having them in my home, caring for them, watching them recover and thrive, it's given me a sense of purpose and connection that I didn't even realize I was missing. They've given me far more than I've given them. So here's what I want you to take away from this story. I want you to understand that every day you're going to encounter opportunities to help or to look away, to show mercy or to show indifference, to take responsibility or to pass the buck. These won't always be dramatic situations like finding animals freezing in a snowstorm. Most of the time, there'll be smaller moments, a stray animal that needs help, a neighbor's pet that's being neglected, an animal shelter that needs volunteers or donations, a conversation where you can speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. In those moments, you have a choice. You can do what's easy and convenient, or you can do what's right. You can look away, or you can say, not my problem, or you can say, I'm going to help. And I'm here to tell you, from the perspective of someone who's lived 62 years and has made both kinds of choices at different times in my life, the times you help, the times you engage, the times you take responsibility. Even when it's not yours, those are the times you'll remember. Those are the times you'll be proud of. Those are the times that will actually matter when you look back on your life. The times you looked away, the times you didn't want to get involved, the times you chose convenience over compassion. Those are the times you'll regret. Those are the times you wish you could have back so you could make a different choice. Don't live with those regrets. When you see suffering, do something about it. When you see cruelty, speak up against it. When you see a creature in need, help if you can. It might cost you something, your time, your money, your comfort, but I promise you what you gain will be worth far more than what you lose. Grace and Cooper are lying in their beds in my house right now. They're warm, they're safe, they're fed and cared for. They'll never be abandoned again. They'll never be tied up and left to die. They'll live out the rest of their lives knowing that they matter, that they're valued, that they're loved. And that one puppy that didn't make it, I think about him often. I've asked the veterinary clinic to give him a proper burial on their property under a tree. They agreed. He didn't get to live the life he should have had, but at least in his last moments, he wasn't alone. His mother was there, and I, Joel Osteen, was there, and people who cared were trying to save him. That's not nothing. That matters. This world can be challenging. People can be thoughtless and selfish, but it doesn't have to stay that way. Every act of kindness, every act of mercy, every life saved, these things matter. These things push back against the darkness. These things remind us what it means to be human in the best sense of that word, created in God's image. So I'm asking you, be the person who stops, be the person who helps, be the person who speaks up, be the person who takes responsibility, be the person who shows mercy. Because someday you might be the person who's vulnerable, who's suffering, who needs help. And when that day comes, you'll pray that someone stops for you, that someone cares enough to help even when it's inconvenient, that someone values your life enough to do something about your suffering. Be that person for others, human or animal, now while you have the chance. Thank you for listening. Now go do something good.